evening and welcome to our Meet the Candidates, a forum for candidates running in the November 5th general election. This segment of the forum is for representatives in House District 31B. I'm Carrie Lund, Executive Director of the Ham Lake Area Chamber of Commerce, who co-sponsor Meet the Candidates with the Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids Area League of Women Voters. All candidates were invited to this forum. The Chamber of Commerce and League of Women Voters do not support or oppose any political parties or candidates for office. The League does help citizens become informed voters and advocates for important issues. This is what this evening is about, informing our voters. If you are interested in the League, visit their website, LWVABCMN.org. Women, men, and young people are invited to join. The views expressed in each forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters or of our chamber. The LWV posts complete unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. The candidates will answer 2 introductory questions, which they have received in advance, followed by questions submitted by the public via our website and questions of importance to the Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters. We'll end with closing statements. Answers are limited to 90 seconds for each of the 2 introductory questions and 1 minute for each of the other questions. Candidates will take turns being the first to answer a question. Linda Rogers is our moderator for this evening.
Thanks, Carrie. The League of Women Voters, Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids area also welcomes you to this forum for candidates for House Representative 31B, which includes all our parts of cities of, get ready, Ham Lake, Andover, East Bethel, Linwood Township, Oak Grove, and even Athens Township, part of it in Isanti County. Thank you to North Metro Cable TV for recording the forum and making it available for multiple showings and online. Again, I'm Linda Rogers, forum moderator, and a member of the League of Women Voters, Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids area. I live in Anoka and cannot vote for either of these candidates. Welcome to our candidates for House District 31B, Gadisa Berkessa and Peggy Scott. We'll begin with the 2 general questions that were provided to the candidates in advance. Gadisa Berkessa, what is your motivation to run for this office, and what experience or knowledge would help you serve effectively?
Thank you for having me tonight here. And I'm one of the lucky guys to be here running for an office today. Came from 2,000 miles away from Africa, and now today trying to represent the district I call my home. So, and when I left 20 years ago, I made a commitment for education. And then I came over here, went to school, got my education from University of Minnesota, received my bachelor degree in engineering, and also received my master's. So this is an opportunity I was given by the country. And this is the right time for me to give back. So my main motivation is I benefited from this country. This is the time for me to serve my community, and that's why I am running. And my experience, no political experience. If you're looking for a politician, we have one in the office for the past 16 years. But I am someone who is your neighbor, who understands who my neighbors are, and also who went through all the challenges, up and downs, and I am a hardworking American. Thank you.
Peggy Scott, what is your motivation to run for this office, and what experience or knowledge would help you serve effectively?
Well, thank you to the League for having the forum, and I'm glad my opponent could make it to this forum since he wasn't at the North Metro Mayor's one. But I am running because I think I want to see Minnesota thrive again. Over the last few years, we've seen our test scores with our students plummet. Just a little over 50% of our third graders can read at grade level and do math at grade level. That's unacceptable in the state of Minnesota. We have seen an uncontrollable amount of spending. We've seen an $18 billion surplus be squandered and given to nonprofits and with very little to no accountability. We've seen regressive taxes placed on the taxpayers of Minnesota, including, watch for it in January, your gas tax is going to go up now. It's going to go up about 3.5 cents per gallon, and that's going to be tied to inflation. We saw an increase in the budget of 40%. Raise your hand if you got a 40% raise last year in your family. They raised spending 40%, raised spending $22 billion, and they raised your taxes. That still wasn't enough. So they've raised your taxes, regressive taxes. It's time to restore balance in the state of Minnesota, and we need to help Minnesota thrive again.
Peggy Scott, what are your goals for 31B's future?
Thank you, Linda. My goals are to empower parents to make more decisions about their children's lives and education. And I believe that we need to relieve the taxpayers of the state of Minnesota of some of these new taxes that were passed. It wasn't like they gave carve-outs for the middle class. These are regressive tax increases that they've placed on the people of Minnesota. Our small businesses are also feeling the effect of that, so I would roll back some of these tax increases, and I would also relieve small businesses with all of the mandates that were passed in the last couple of years that make just doing paperwork in a small business really, really onerous to the point where they have to hire out someone that's a consultant just to wade through all the massive amounts of paperwork or face a penalty if they make an error. So there are several things that I'd like to see happen in those regards.
Gadisa Berkessa, what are your goals for 31B's future?
My goals for 31B future is when I moved to Andover, my priority was safety, because Andover neighborhood is safe, my district is safe, and I would like to keep it that way. How can we do that? By supporting our police and to make sure they have the resources they need. And on top of that, the other reason I moved down to Andover is education. How can we do that? By supporting our teachers and to make sure our child's, the opportunities we got today, the opportunities we got, we went to college, got our degrees, master's degrees, bachelor degrees. We want to have that for our kids. So that's why, the goals I have is make sure we are safe, our neighbors they feel safe. This is a time when everybody is getting scared. The neighbors don't talk to each other because they don't know who they are. This is the time we are in, and when people call names because of where they came from or what they look like, and we really want our neighbors to be safe. That's the first thing on my priority for my goal. And education, as I mentioned. On top of that, economy is one of the top. Everybody talks about cutting taxes, right? Nobody actually cut taxes. The only people they get cut tax for the top 2% or maybe 1%. Yes, they did cut taxes for them, not for me and for you, for my neighbors. So that's what I'm gonna fight for. I wanna make sure that the small businesses thrive in our community by helping them, supporting them, making sure that they have the resources they need, and also they get compensated for opening a small business in our places.
Thank you. I'll now ask questions submitted online by the public, and responses are limited to 1 minute. Gadisa Berkessa, what is the most urgent concern House District 31B currently faces, and how would you address that concern?
The most urgent concern I see is education. Education is the most main concern. You've heard about Project 2025. They're trying to get rid of Department of Education. We have kids. I have 2 kids, 8-year-old and the 4-year-old just sitting over there. They are in in elementary school. And then my daughter, CK, she is currently in preschool in Family of Christ. And then those are the things we really need to protect. If they get rid of Department of Education, we're not gonna have the education we have today. And not everybody can afford paying for these public schools or private schools. If it is me, I cannot afford to pay for the education because I went to college by some of the scholarships on top of working hard. Like sometimes I work 2-3 jobs to make sure I support my family and myself. So that's why education is one of the things I focus on. This really needs an urgent action.
Peggy Scott, what is the most urgent concern House District 31B currently faces, and how would you address that concern?
Well, I agree that education is an urgent concern. As I said, when around 50%, only 50% of our kids, it doesn't matter what socioeconomic status those kids are, when a little over 50% of our kids can read and do math at grade level, that is failure. And it's not the teacher's fault. It's the system's fault. And so what do we do to fix the system? Well, for number one, we repeal this crazy disciplinary policy that they put in place where a teacher cannot expel or suspend a kid from preschool through 3rd grade. We have kids bloodying each other at that age group, throwing chairs and bloodying other students, and that teacher is helpless to do anything about it. Those kids need to be removed from the classroom. They need to be given time at home until the teachers and the administrators and the parents can work out a plan for that child to put them back into the schools. So there are other issues too, but I'm out of time.
Peggy Scott, what do you think is the number one issue facing small businesses in our district, and what would you do to address it?
Well, thank you for that question. The number one issue for our small businesses, there are 2 things. Inflation is killing them. And number 2 is the regulation and the mandates that the legislature and the state government have placed on them, especially in the last few years. We've talked about earned sick and safe time. We've talked about paid family and medical leave. Again, the paperwork just to comply with all these new laws, the paid family medical leave bill is that thick. Okay, a small business that has 2 employees has to wade through that, has to be able to implement it, understand it, implement it, and if they don't, they're going to get penalized. In these last few years, I've seen small businesses and all businesses be treated like they are demons. What used to be a $1,000 penalty for a paperwork error, they raised to $10,000. These are the kind of things that make businesses want to get out of Minnesota, and I think it needs to come to a stop. Thank you.
Gadisa Berkessa, what do you think is the number one issue facing small businesses in our district, and what would you do to address it?
Yeah, the number one problem is tax. Our businesses are being taxed a lot, so that's why they're getting scared. And we talk about FMLA, right? The family leave. It concerns me when people think about if somebody is sick and they don't go, they just gotta go to work. It's not gonna work like that. How many people got a business? But how many percentage of people, how many percentage of your neighbors have their own business? Think about that. I am one of the small business owner. And when I think about it, the main problem is tax. The tax is something I need to take action on. They keep saying they cut taxes. They don't really cut taxes for those small businesses. They cut taxes for billionaires and millionaires. That's what we need to stop doing, and that's why I'm gonna fight for. And family paid leave has to stay there for me and for all of you, for all my neighbors.
We're going to expand on that previous question a little bit. It might sound a bit repetitive, but you both have a lot to say. Gadisa Berkessa, small business owners say that workplace mandates passed last year make it more difficult and expensive for them to operate. What would you say to a business owner who is frustrated by this, and how would you help them?
Yeah, as I mentioned, all the legislation passed based on the number of employees they have. And as a small business owner, and the struggles, our main struggle is a task cut, right? We need to have a task cut for small businesses, and then we have to make sure that they have incentives for just opening up a business in our district. And then at the same time, and we really need to appreciate them because they're going to hire younger generations who, like me, for example, when I started working, I used to work with a minimum pay. So those are the things that we really need to make sure they are going to hire our kids. We need to give them incentives to make sure they have the business around. That's how I can help them.
Peggy Scott. Small business owners say that workplace mandates passed last year make it more difficult and expensive for them to operate. What would you say to a business owner who is frustrated by this, and how would you help?
Well, just to continue on in my previous comments about the mandates on a lot of these new regulations that were put in place against small businesses, I would tell that small business, I will do everything I can, provided there's divided government and we have to work on it, a solution that works for businesses of all sizes. Let's repeal some of the onerous paperwork. Did you know that under this paid family medical leave that you are going to be required to share your health care information with your employer to verify that you do indeed need that time off? So that is a piece of information I don't think employers want to have, nor do they need to have. So let's talk about talk to the small businesses, and they will tell you, the National Federation of Independent Businesses will tell you what the most onerous regulations are for these small businesses. So let's listen to them and take their advice.
Peggy Scott, do you support a Minnesota Equal Rights Amendment?
I do not support the Equal Rights Amendment as drafted last year under single party control. They removed the word sex, equal rights on the basis of sex, and replaced it with gender. Now, what that does is that allows someone that is a transgender person that is a biological male to turn around and compete in the same marketplace as a woman. It also allows, y'all need to read the fine print of that Equal Rights Amendment, so-called Equal Rights Amendment, because what it is doing is actually taking women backward. It also allows for public spaces that would allow for transgender men that are biological males to go to women's prisons. That's already happening in Minnesota. And it also allows for them to be in female locker rooms. Now, I don't think that's equal treatment. I don't think that's fair treatment to women. So as it's written now, I would oppose it.
Gadisa Berkessa, do you support a Minnesota Equal Rights Amendment?
Before I say yes or no to this question, everybody is supposed to have equal rights, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I believe. But related to this amendment, our problem is not about the amendment, not trying to work together. So that's where we're failing. And we try to pick the problems. If we bring it to the table, discuss our differences, we should be able to talk about this and resolve it. So that's why if we think there is an issue with a bill, we just got to talk about it and fix it together. But we always think about the party whenever something happens. As my opponent said, one party controlled bill, right? That should go away. That's our problem. Every time one party brings something to the table, instead of coming together how to work out a solution, we end up saying, okay, this is not represent my party. That's not how I believe.
Gadisa Berkessa, what do you think is the most important thing the legislature can do to reduce road fatalities?
The most important thing they should do is invest in our infrastructure. Infrastructure is a big deal, and we've seen it. When the current government president was trying to get approval for infrastructure, everybody said no. Now after infrastructure bill was passed, now everybody was saying, they're talking about like, oh, okay, we are proud, we got an infrastructure bill here in Minnesota, but they opposed to it. Like, think about that. And that's why what we need to do is we need to invest in our infrastructure, and also we need to continue to maintain our roads.
Peggy Scott, what do you think is the most important thing the legislature can do to reduce road fatalities?
More roundabouts, people love those, right? I'm just kidding. I think we invest a lot of money in roads and bridges right now in the state of Minnesota, but there's still more work to do. One of the things that I would be in favor of right now on the gas tax, 60% of that 60% of that goes to roads and bridges, 40% goes to transit. I think that should probably be an 80-20 proposition. We live in a wildly, we have a few metro areas, but we have a lot of rural areas. And so the roads and bridges we have to have. And so I think that reallocating that formula would be a good thing to do, that would help sustain our roads and not just sustain the ones that we have, but build additional lanes and additional infrastructure.
Peggy Scott, menthol, candy, and fruit-flavored tobacco products are attractive to kids and could lead to a lifetime of tobacco addiction and disease. Do you support ending the sale of all flavored tobacco products?
Well, we already outlawed that in the state of Minnesota, the flavored and the brightly colored and the things that are appealing to young eyes. And we even, I think, had something that was passed that had to do with where it was placed. It couldn't be at a child's eye level, that sort of thing. But I find it interesting that, this is a concern for sure. But the legalization of marijuana bill that passed this year basically is a sideways way of allowing underage people to consume marijuana because they remove the penalties. And so there are a lot of things to be considered for the health and well-being of our kids. That flavored tobacco issue is one of them. I believe it's been largely solved in the state of Minnesota, but we also need to be watching for this new marijuana law that's when it is implemented. They did some things through some funny language that is not going to be good for our kids.
Gadisa Berkessa, menthol, candy, and fruit-flavored tobacco products are attractive to kids and can lead to a lifetime of tobacco addiction and disease. Do you support ending the sale of all flavored tobacco products?
Yes, I do support it because that's something I don't want my kids to do. And I am somebody who is family-based. And if I don't like something for my family, my son, my daughter, and I would like not to, I don't want them to have it. So that's why I support that.
We have time for just one more question. Gadisa Berkessa, last session, a bill was introduced in the House File 1930. It would have allowed terminally ill adults to request a prescription for life-ending medication, which they would have to self-administer. Ultimately, the bill was not included in the Omnibus Health Bill. What are your thoughts on the bill?
This is a little tough one, but however, this is something that can be determined between the person and the family. And we shouldn't be just getting involved in it and then make a decision for them. So if they decided to do it, that's their call. That's all I've got.
Peggy Scott, last session a bill was introduced by the House, House File 1930. It would have allowed terminally ill adults to request a prescription for life-ending medication, which they would have to self-administer. Ultimately, the bill was not included in the Omnibus Health Bill. What are your thoughts on the bill?
Well, the bill came before me in at least one committee that I sit on, and I voted against it. It was riveting testimony. It's very difficult to watch a loved one suffer through a prolonged illness. I had a good friend several years ago that passed away from ALS, and it's a horrible, horrible disease. It wrecks your body. I did see some really interesting life lessons through her suffering and how she did it with grace. It's a tough issue. I don't support it. And one of the really not great parts of that bill, the way it's written, is that it mandates that doctors, if they're not comfortable administering the drug to the person, they have to recommend that patient to a doctor that does, which in essence is saying, well, by virtue of, I'm still going to help you do this because I'm going to just refer you to another doctor. That puts these doctors, we heard testimony from them, in a really difficult space. Having taken the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm, they felt it was flying in the face of that, so I don't support it.
It's time for closing statements. Peggy Scott.
Well, thank you again, League of Women Voters, for having us here tonight, and thank you for all of you to come out here this evening, and I hope you're all careful driving home. I really want to see Minnesota thrive again. I have 2 grandkids on the way, and I want them to see us be living in a state that's thriving, that has a good educational system where the teachers are empowered in the classroom. I want to see sanity restored when it comes to spending, and I just believe that we can do better than what we've been doing under one-party control. So, and even Jean Pulowski, Democrat state representative retiring from down in Winona, said that we need divided government, and I believe that's what we need so that everybody will come to the table.
Gadisa Berkessa.
Yeah, I would like to say thank you everyone for inviting me here and also for coming out here to listen to us. And this is a great honor to speak in front of you. And what I would like to say is this is the right time. Now the voting started. And I would like to thank everybody who has already voted. And also, we need a person who can work for our future, for our kids, for our schools, for our education, for our safety. And also make sure women also have the right to make their own decisions. So that means we're not making abortion legal. I oppose a national abortion ban, but I don't support free abortion pass. So those are the things we really need to make sure we understand. And then I really appreciate the support I'm getting from all over the place when I go around door knocking. And thank you so much. Wherever you are, thank you, thank you, thank you.
League of Women Voters thanks the candidates for speaking to voters about issues and for running for Minnesota State House of Representatives, District 31B. Thanks to our audience, viewers, and those who submitted questions. Find links to all forums at LWVABCMN.org. General election is Tuesday, November 5th, and early voting has already begun. You can vote early at your City Hall or Anoka County Elections Office. Please see your city's website for additional information. You can register to vote update your registration, find information on voting options, and find your polling place, all online at mnvotes.org or the Minnesota Secretary of State website. You can also register or update your registration at your polling place on Election Day. Here is our slogan for the year at League of Women Voters. Your vote is your voice. Make your voice heard by voting on or before November 5th.